The neon lights of the city blurred into a dizzying smear of gold and red, reflected in the melting slush on the pavement. For Chloe, the New Year's Eve party had been a success, but the combination of deafening bass, forced small talk, and 3 too many gin and tonics had left her head spinning. By 1:15 a.m., the glitter on her cheeks felt like sandpaper, and all she wanted was the silence of her own apartment. She stood on the corner, shivering in a coat that was far too thin for a January frost. Her phone screen was cracked, but she managed to open the ride-sharing app, High Demand. The price was triple the usual, but she didn't care. She tapped Request. 2 minutes later, a sleek, black sedan, an unmarked, late-model vehicle, pulled up to the curb. The license plate matched the app, 7T-X92L. The window rolled down just an inch. Chloe? The driver was a man in his late 40s. He had a face that was aggressively ordinary, the kind of face you'd forget the moment you stopped looking at it. He wore a crisp, white shirt and a professional, almost plastic smile. "Yeah, that's me," Chloe mumbled, sliding into the back seat. The warmth of the car hit her like a blanket, and she let out a long, relieved sigh. "Heading to 14th Street, please, near the old bakery." "Long night?" the driver asked, pulling smoothly away from the curb. His voice was unusually calm, a stark contrast to the shouting drunks and the sporadic pop-pop-pop of leftover firecrackers outside. "The longest," Chloe replied, leaning her head against the cold window. "I just want to sleep for 12 hours. "New Year's Eve is a strange time," the driver said, his eyes meeting hers in the rearview mirror. "Everyone is so desperate to leave the past behind, to start fresh. But the past, it has a way of clinging to you, doesn't it?" Chloe didn't answer. She was closing her eyes, drifting. But 10 minutes into the ride, the familiar hum of the tires changed. The car lurched as it made a sharp right turn. Chloe opened her eyes. They were supposed to be heading for the bridge that crossed into her neighborhood. Instead, they were driving down a narrow, unlit road lined with industrial fences and rusted shipping containers. "Hey," Chloe sat up, her heart giving a small, sharp thud against her ribs. "You missed the turn. The bridge is back there." "There's a massive police checkpoint for DUI checks on the bridge," the driver said. He didn't look at her this time. He was staring straight ahead. "And the fireworks display at the park blocked off the main boulevard. I'm taking the back way. It'll save us 20 minutes, trust me." Chloe's stomach did a slow, sickening roll. She lived in this city for 5 years. There were no fireworks at the park this year. They had been moved to the waterfront. "Actually," she said, her voice trembling slightly, "I'd rather just take the bridge. I don't mind the wait. Can you please turn around?" The driver didn't respond. He didn't even slow down. Chloe reached for the door handle, intending to tell him she'd get out right here. She pulled the silver lever. It moved, but the door stayed shut. She pulled harder, her knuckles turning white. Nothing. "The child locks are on," she said, her voice rising in pitch. "Can you unlock the door? Now!" "Safety first on a night like this, Chloe," he replied. "There are a lot of dangerous people out there, drunks, criminals. You're much safer in here with me." A cold shiver ran down her spine. He hadn't looked at his GPS once since the ride started. The phone mounted on his dashboard wasn't running the ride-sharing app at all. It was just a black screen. Panicking, Chloe reached into the pocket of the front passenger seat, looking for a way to break the window or find a tool. Her hand brushed against a stack of papers. She pulled them out. Her breath hitched in her throat, a choked, silent sob. They weren't maps. They were printouts of her own Instagram photos, but not the ones she had shared publicly. There was a photo of her at the gym from a week ago, taken through a gap in the blinds, a photo of her at the grocery store, and a grainy, zoomed-in shot of her through her living room window taken from the street. Across the top of the stack, someone had scrawled in thick, black marker, "January 1st, our new beginning." "Who are you?" she whispered, her hand fumbling frantically in her purse for her phone. I'm the only person who actually sees you, Chloe, the driver said. His professional tone was gone, replaced by a terrifying, intimate whisper that felt like a physical touch. I've watched you for months. I saw you at the party tonight. I saw you dancing with that idiot in the red tie. He didn't deserve your time, but I do. Chloe found her phone and tried to dial 911, but as she looked at the screen, her heart sank. The signal bars were gone. In their place was a small no service icon. She looked at the center console and saw a small black device with blue blinking lights plugged into the cigarette lighter, a signal jammer. No one is coming, Chloe, the driver said, his voice now devoid of any emotion. The police are busy with the riots downtown and the drunk drivers on the highway. The city is screaming so loud tonight that no one will hear one more girl. He floored the accelerator. The sedan roared as it sped deeper into the abandoned warehouse district, where the streetlights were all broken and the only light came from the distant, silent flashes of fireworks on the horizon. Chloe threw her entire weight against the door, screaming, pounding on the reinforced glass. She saw a group of teenagers walking blocks away, laughing, holding sparklers. She screamed until her throat felt like it was bleeding, but the car was soundproofed, a rolling tomb of leather and steel. "Happy New Year, Chloe," the driver said. He reached over and pressed a button on the dash. A heavy, mechanical click echoed through the cabin as the central locking system doubled down. "I told you I'd be the one to take you home. You just didn't realize that home is a place you're never going to leave again." The car swung into a dark, private garage. As the heavy metal rolling door began to descend, blotting out the last sliver of the New Year's moon, Chloe realized the driver wasn't stopping. He was just getting started. The dispatch center was a graveyard of cold coffee and flickering monitors. Outside, the world was celebrating the arrival of a new year, but inside, the air was sterile and smelled of ozone. Sarah pressed her headset closer to her ear. Being a 911 operator on New Year's Eve was like watching a slow-motion train wreck from a distance. So far, she'd handled 3 domestic disputes, a dozen noise complaints, and a frantic call from a man who had accidentally set his garage on fire with a Roman candle. At 11:45 p.m., the line chirped, a new call. 911, what is the location of your emergency? Sarah said, her voice a practiced anchor of calm. There was silence on the other end, just the faint, rhythmic sound of breathing. Then a voice, low, steady, and terrifyingly calm. I don't have an emergency yet, Sarah. I'm just calling to start the clock. Sarah froze. Her hand hovered over the keyboard. Sir, this line is for emergencies only. And how do you know my name? I know a lot of things, the man said. I know you hate the smell of the lilies in the lobby. I know your left earbud is slightly looser than your right. And I know that in exactly 15 minutes, someone in this city is going to die. I want you to listen to it happen. Sarah's heart skipped a beat. She signaled to her supervisor, motioning for a trace. Sir, I need you to tell me where you are. If you're planning on hurting someone, we can help you. Help me? The man laughed, a dry, hollow sound. I don't need help. I'm giving you a gift, a front row seat to justice. Listen, can you hear that? Over the line, Sarah heard a faint, distant whistling sound. It was the wind, but underneath it, there was something else, a rhythmic thud, thud, thud. Footsteps on metal. Where are you? She repeated, her fingers flying across the keys. The trace was bouncing. The caller was using a VPN or a burner relay. I'm high up, Sarah. I can see the whole city. The lights, the people like ants, all pretending they have a future. But I'm looking at one specific window. It's a large window, third floor of a gray, concrete building. Does that sound familiar? Sarah felt a drop of cold sweat slide down her spine. The dispatch center was on the third floor of a gray, concrete building. She slowly turned her chair toward the darkened window behind her. All she could see was her own pale reflection and the distant glow of the city. "You're at the station," she whispered. 11 minutes to midnight, the man said, ignoring her. "You know, the funny thing about a countdown is that people only focus on the end. They forget the seconds in between, the seconds where the victim realizes what's coming. That's the best part." Sarah tried to keep him talking. "Why are you doing this? What do you want from me?" "I want you to remember," he said. "Last year, 11:59 p.m., a call came in, a woman. She said someone was in her house. She gave you an address on Miller Street. Do you remember what you told her?" Sarah's mind raced. Miller Street, last year, the chaos of the new year. I told her to stay on the line. I told her the units were 2 minutes away." "The units were 10 minutes away because they were busy arresting a drunk teenager 2 blocks over," the man's voice sharpened. "She died while you were telling her everything would be okay." "She was my sister, Sarah. And tonight, I'm going to tell you that everything is going to be okay, even when it isn't." The thudding sound on the line got louder. It wasn't just footsteps anymore. It was a metallic scraping, like a knife being dragged across a vent. "Sarah," her supervisor whispered, leaning over, "the trace, it's not coming from outside, it's coming from the building's internal network. He's on the roof. He tapped into the maintenance line." The building's lights flickered. 10 minutes, the man said. "I'm coming down the service elevator now. You have 10 minutes to think about every lie you've ever told a caller. 10 minutes to feel what she felt." Sarah stood up, her headset cord yanking her head back. She unclipped it and backed away from her desk. The other operators were looking around, confused. The security guard at the front desk wasn't answering his radio. The man's voice was now coming through the intercom system of the room, distorted and booming. "Don't bother running, Sarah. All the exits are electronically locked for the New Year's security protocol. You're the one who programmed it, remember?" The clock on the wall ticked. 11:55 p.m. Suddenly, the elevator at the end of the hall dinged. The doors slid open. No one was inside, but a single, old-fashioned kitchen timer sat on the floor, ticking loudly. 5 minutes, Sarah. His voice came through her discarded headset, lying on the desk. It was so loud she could hear it from across the room. She ran to the window, desperate to break it, but the glass was reinforced. Below, she saw the crowds in the street starting to gather, their faces upturned to the sky, waiting for the big ball to drop. They were laughing. They were cheering. 4 minutes. She heard a sound from the ceiling tiles directly above her desk. A slow, deliberate creak. Dust drifted down onto her keyboard. 3 minutes. Sarah grabbed a heavy stapler, the only weapon she could find. She stared at the ceiling tile. It began to shift. A dark, gloved hand reached through. 2 minutes. The man dropped from the ceiling with the grace of a predator. He was wearing a dark jumpsuit and a mask that looked like a distorted clock face. In his hand, he held a long, thin blade. 1 minute, Sarah, he whispered, standing just 5 feet away. Outside, the crowd began the final countdown. 10, 9, 8. He stepped closer. Sarah backed into the wall, her heart hammering against her ribs like a trapped bird. 7, 6, 5. He raised the knife. The reflection of the city's lights danced on the steel. 4, 3, 2. Happy New Year, Sarah, he said, his voice overlapping with the thousands of voices outside. 1. The sky outside exploded into 1,000 colors. The roar of the fireworks drowned out the scream that followed. When the police finally bypassed the security lock 10 minutes later, the room was silent. The monitors were still flickering, the coffee was still cold, and on Sarah's desk, the kitchen timer finally hit 0. Sarah was gone. Only her headset remained, stained with a single drop of blood and a small note pinned to the screen. "Time's up." Oak Haven never slept on New Year's Eve, but tonight the air felt different. It was heavy, thick with the smell of sulfur from early fireworks and a cold that bit straight through to the bone. Elias stood on the edge of the main square near the ancient clock tower, watching the crowds below. He hated them. He hated their forced laughter, their expensive coats, and that stupid optimism that a clock striking 12 would somehow fix their miserable lives. Elias was 40, but in the reflection of the shop windows, he looked 60. 6 months ago, he was fired from the company he helped build. His boss, Marcus, had stolen his clients and left him with nothing but debt. While Marcus was likely sipping vintage champagne in a penthouse, Elias didn't even have enough for next month's rent. "You want to change it, don't you?" a voice whispered right into his ear. Elias jumped. Standing next to him was a tall man in a long black coat that seemed to swallow the light of the street lamps. He wore an old-fashioned top hat and his hands gripped a massive gold pocket watch. The face had no numbers, only 12 empty circles that looked like dead eyes. "Who are you?" Elias stammered. "Some call me the Lord of Time, others the Collector of Seconds." The man smiled, but his lips didn't move. "It is 11:58 p.m. Time for a resolution. Mine always come true, for a small fee." Elias remembered the legend, an old drunk's tale about how at midnight you could trade someone else's time for your own success. In that moment, fueled by cheap whiskey and pure spite, he nodded. "I want Marcus to feel every second of my misery. I want his youth, his energy. I want to be who I was before he destroyed me." "Resolution accepted," the man whispered, clicking the watch open. "The fee will be due when the circle closes. You only need to give me what you no longer need anyway." The second hand on the tower clock lurched toward the 12. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. The square erupted in the roar of fireworks, but Elias heard only a deafening heartbeat. Suddenly, hot blood surged through his veins. He felt his back straighten, the skin on his hands tightened, his gray hair vanished, and muscles that had ached for years were suddenly powerful. He felt like a god. He looked toward the corporate skyscraper. On a giant screen above the square, a live feed of the company party appeared. Marcus was raising a glass to make a toast. But something was wrong. Marcus's hand began to shake uncontrollably. The glass shattered on the floor. Before the eyes of hundreds, Marcus's face turned gray and collapsed in seconds. His hair fell out in clumps, and his expensive suit began to hang off him like a skeleton. Marcus slumped to the ground, old, frail, and gasping for air as if he were 110 years old. Elias laughed. It worked. He had stolen his time. But then, a sudden chill hit him. He looked around, but the square was empty. Everyone had vanished. The fireworks in the sky were frozen in mid-explosion like shards of colored glass. The silence was absolute. "Time is relative, Elias," the Lord of Time's voice boomed from every corner of the square. The man in the top hat stood in the center of the frozen chaos. His pocket watch was now ticking as loud as hammer blows. "You got your youth. You got his time. Now it is my turn." "What do you want? I promised someone else's time," Elias screamed, his young voice sounding foreign in the silence. "Yes, but someone must watch the time. Someone must wind the clocks of the world while the others live their little lives." The Lord of Time took off his hat and handed it to Elias. In that moment, Elias saw the man's face. It wasn't a face. It was a complex mechanism of gears and springs slowly grinding to a halt. "I said you would give me what you don't need," the mechanism hissed. "You don't need your future because you already have your past. Welcome to the office, Elias. You will stand here for 1,000 years until the next person whispers a wish." Elias tried to run, but his legs grew heavy. He felt his skin turning into cold metal. His consciousness began to splinter into seconds and minutes. He became part of the tower. The people in the square suddenly moved. Time resumed, the fireworks burned out. No one noticed that a new statue had appeared on top of the clock tower. A young man with terror in his eyes, clutching a watch with no numbers. Elias saw it all. He saw his friends. He saw Marcus's family weeping. He saw the world keep turning. He was young, strong, and immortal, but he was a prisoner of a second that would never end. Happy New Year.